What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the most recent project by Ghostfire. Basically, this project is called Skeleton Coast, and it came out in the fall of 2013. Now, this is a pretty hit project here. Like most of Ghostfire's products, I do like this one quite a bit. I'd have to say it's an awesome little project here. It's the most recent thing that they've done, which is unfortunate because that came out in 2013. So I would have liked some more projects since that point. They do have about 3 good projects that I've reviewed here. I reviewed their Drunken Lullabies from 2008. I reviewed the last Steampunk Waltz from 2010, and then I reviewed this project Skeleton Coast from 2013. So the thing about it is they do actually have a 2011 album. That's the only album they did. It's called the Tyburn Jig and Other Popular Dances. So I'm going to get to that one at some point, and then we'll and then we'll basically wrap up Ghostfire as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. But the thing about this particular project is it doesn't have like the main vocalist on here that's off of the earlier projects by Ghostfire. So basically Steve Sheridan. So basically Steve Sheridan is not on this particular project. There's a female vocalist on here, but she kind of provides like a different kind of she kind of keeps the hauntingness of this particular band. So it's still Ghostfire. I'd have to say it's just a different kind of pitch as far as that particularly kind of happens. I would say initially I would say if you're used to some of Ghostfire's biggest hits, like the last Steampunk Waltz, this may be like a mild learning curve to get used to like this new vocalist, but it shouldn't take that much effort just because she's a pretty good vocalist and she provides like the same haunting kind of vibe just from like a female's point of view as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just a good concept kind of get this. I do feel like the definite instrumentation works pretty damn well on here. It's the same kind of glimmering, haunting typeness that's they're known for. It has some makeshift kind of vibes on here, and this overall has a very ghoulish kind of swirling type atmosphere that just provides a lot of aesthetic and this overall style. So their style, so Ghostfire's style composition is definitely off the meter on this particular project. Maybe they don't have as much of an immediate single this time as they did on 2010's project like the last Steampunk Waltz, but I would have to say there is some good stuff on here I would definitely feel like. So I don't know if there was like a single release from this. Tried looking on YouTube. Ghostfire on YouTube doesn't really provide much content as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. They only have like 10 or 12 videos after 15 years. That's kind of the concept about that. But I would have to say there is some good stuff here. 4 quick songs just as far as that batch kind of happens. These are all a bunch of glimmering type songs I'd have to say. The closest thing I would probably suppose to like the typical kind of like last Steampunk Waltz type pitch from Ghostfire would have to be Graminsky's Soul. That's a pretty good concept to kind of get that particular one. That's about the closest thing that would really happen. There's some makeshift songs on here that do kind of have some of that ghastly kind of makeshiftness, just in a more ghoulish type atmosphere. Definitely similar to like the stuff that like Korn would do, just with like a touch of like maybe. Oh, it's kind of tricky to figure out who it would be kind of similar to. Maybe like Metallica, just not quite as gas. Maybe with like a touch of Metallica or one of those kind of makeshift rock bands that kind of would do those stretching kind of traverse that would do some of those stretching kind of car traverse singles just in a way more ghastly kind of sense. I mean, Metallica's not really ghastly for the most part, I'd have to say, but it's just kind of a concept of getting like some of these makeshift kind of rumblers just for blue collar type fare. Because it's interesting that despite how ghostly Ghostfire kind of is, you still get the concept of getting some of these makeshift type tones just in the concept of still chugging along regular day type fare, I would have to suppose. So it's a pretty excellent concept to get some of these. This project is definitely going to get a rave score, but we'll go ahead and talk about the songs I recommend on here, which would just be all 4 of them. I mean, this album, this EP is not going to get a 10 out of 10, despite me liking all 4 of the songs. It's going to get pretty damn close, I'd have to say. But the only real reason why it doesn't get a 10 out of 10 is just because of the fact that it just needs I feel like it just needed a single with just a little bit more bite and punch. I feel like they probably should have promoted this a little bit better, tried to get back to the gallant kind of atmosphere that they had with the last Steampunk Waltz and Hand of Glory and some of those type ones. I just feel like they had more pep last time. A lot of these are just more swashbuckled and just kind of more glimmering. A lot of these are just more swashbuckled and kind of more floundering and glimmering, more so than the aspect of having a little bit of pep and more drunken kind of spree of like craze as far as that pitch can happen. So there's not really like a complete tumultuous type one, but I still have to say, let's talk about some of these on here. Like basically, Fire in the Hole is a pretty highlighted one. This is the most popular one according to Spotify. It has almost 1 million plays, I'd have to say. So it's an interesting concept. I don't know if this is released as a single, but it is a pretty nice one. This is like a traverse kind of groggy haze of a song, I'd have to say. This is like a swashbuckled kind of commerce, I would definitely feel like. And it's just some solid blue collar makeshift offhandedly, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept kind of get this one. This is definitely one to kind of have for like a straightforward kind of sense. If you're introduced to Ghostfire, just kind of getting some of those initial type ones to kind of have just in like a more, just kind of in a more ghastly type sense. And just, I mean, the light guitar licks on this particular song, it's just a very light touch kind of song, I'd have to suppose. It's just a good concept kind of get this particular it's just a very light touch song, I'd have to say. It's pretty hazy overall. I'd have to say it's probably the most commercial of all the songs, particularly kind of on here. I do like the concept of this particular one. This works pretty well. It's very swashbuckled, I'd have to say. Just the concept of it. It has that standard malaise, but it's more groggy than anything else. Just kind of But it's just a song that pretty much has the most pep on this particular project, I'd have to say. It's just a good concept to kind of get because they're so offhanded. Just the concept of Ghostfire, they don't really try to go for like the commercial markets, but it's just kind of like an acquired taste that when you get the fittingness of this particular stuff, it works pretty well. But it's just kind of the concept. I mean, this is the problem with this particular project is it's just not immediate and casual, I'd have to say, compared to songs like The Last Steampunk Waltz and some of those type ones. I feel like it's a good song, but it just is not. I feel like it just kind of has like a not immediate kind of interface with it as far as that pitch kind of happens. It's just kind of you have to be a little bit used to them to kind of appreciate this particular project more. But this is a relatively makeshift type song. This has a good sense of it, but it's just not as casual as like it probably needed to be. But still a pretty good song. So Graminsky's Soul is a pretty highlighted one. Do enjoy this one. This is like a malaise kind of drunken out and about fun. I would have to say this is some great autumn. This is some great autumn saloon crispness, I would have to say, and it's pretty similar to Hand of Glory off of the last Steampunk Waltz, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty good concept to get this particular one. This one probably has a little bit more dance pep towards it, I'd have to say. There are a couple dance type songs on here, some decent pep, but not quite as affable like I was saying in 2010. I just feel like the concept of some of these are just yeah, Graminsky's Soul really feels like your head spinning some of that type of stuff if you are visiting like saloons and bars and stuff like that. Just some good grogginess to kind of have just within that relative pitch. Just a great kind of just some great kind of drunken malaise to get crunk with the ladies as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens. Just some great type tones as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Real nice one. This is probably the one with the most pep on here. I mean, Servants is a pretty nice one. I mean, Servants is a pretty nice one also, but it's just a lengthier song, not quite as snappy as Graminsky's Soul, I'd have to say, but it's a good concept. So speaking of Servants, Servants is like a glimmering kind of up creek dance jig. I'd have to say this is like a superb kind of ghastly aesthetic. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a nice mid-pace jive. I would feel like, and this is just some good evening haste. So this is a little bit lengthier song, but it works pretty well. This is another glimmering and ghoulish type one that works with a good pitch. Just a little bit, kind of an in between, just like a stretching kind of song that has a little bit more makeshift type feel. This has a little bit more stretching and overcast feel in some senses, but then it's also pretty good uptick kind of. But then it's also pretty good up creek and uptick dance job, I'd have to say. So it's a dope concept to get. So it's a dope concept to get this one in particular. It's just kind of a good companion piece to Graminsky's Soul, just a little bit more stretched out of a song. They're both some pretty good out on the town kind of malaise type ones to kind of have just within that sense. Typical kind of fanfare for Ghostfire as far as that pitch kind of has with this. It's good to kind of see them continuing to be in their prime as far as that pitch kind of happens, even with the new vocalists and stuff like that. This chick on this song does pretty well with that. She really has that glimmer as far as that pitch kind of happens. There's some good concepts, some good melodies on there, that sort of pitch. I mean, I do feel like Graminsky's Soul and Nothing Right Here are probably the most immediate ones on this particular project, but Graminsky's Soul is just a more just snappy kind of one, almost in like a single type sense, very similar to like Hand of Glory and the last Steampunk Waltz type pitch. I'd have to say it's a good concept, but Service is just a stretchy one that's just kind of for some drunken dance jig, I'd have to say. So that's a nice one also. Nothing Right Here is the last song on here, and this is another good. Nothing Right Here is the last song to recommend on here, and this is another highlighted one. This is definitely like a floundering kind of swashbuckled malaise, I would have to say. It's a good pondering and ruminating type tune, I would definitely feel like, and this is just some great ghastly makeshift, I'd have to say. So this is a dope concept to get this one in particular, I'd have to say. It's just a dope concept to get this one in particular, I'd have to say. It's just a good overall type one. This is more typical kind of Ghostfire that I'm used to as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just some glimmering type ones, just for like a ghastly kind of traverse type fare, I'd have to say. This one, Nothing Right Here, is more in the same sort of pitch as Fire in the Hole, just a little bit more malaise than that one. This one just has a little bit more ghastliness, more feeling like Korn and Marilyn Manson, some of those type folks, compared to the typical kind of more drunken saloon type music that they're also known for, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept. Basically, Nothing Right Here and Fire in the Hole are the more traverse type ones. Servants and Graminsky's Soul are the more kind of saloon and bar hopping type tunes, I'd have to say. So it's a dope concept to kind of get that in particular. But yeah, so what I'm going to score this EP, basically I'm going to give this EP like a 9.5 out of 10. It would almost get a 10, but it's just kind of the fact that it's just not as full blown as the media as I'd like it to be. It's a great concept. It's a great concept. I liked all the songs on this particular project, so it definitely rocks and kicks a lot of ass as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. It's just kind of the concept that just doesn't have that casual kind of immediate factor, and it's more difficult to recommend to your pals and stuff like that as far as that pitch kind of happens. I just think it needed a song like Hand of Glory or the last Steampunk Waltz that could have had some more immediate bite, that could have been like the rave kind of winner as far as that pitch kind of happens with this. It's a different pitch. The vocalist from the earlier songs isn't on here, and this chick does a pretty good job on this particular song, and just within that pitch was just kind of the concept that it just doesn't have the immediate factor, just like the casual sense that it probably needs. And Ghostfire's pretty offhanded as is. On top of that, this is like a digital only album, so you can't purchase it on CD. Most of their music's pretty difficult to get a hold of, so that's kind of a natch to it in certain senses. I'd have to say is this kind of concept. But 9.5, 9.5 score. The social score though, I'm gonna go ahead and give like an 8 out of 10 because I feel like there's some good stuff on here. I do like these drunken kind of bar hopping type tunes that work pretty damn well. I'd have to say is this kind of the concept that these are great songs. This kind of the concept that you just have to have like an acquired taste for it. If you're a fan of Ghostfire already, I still would have to say that it still takes a little bit of a learning curve to get used to, but it's just kind of the concept that once you are used to it, it hits full blown. I'd have to say it's this kind of concept. It's just kind of there's just some kind of trial and error with fucking with this particular project as far as that pitch kind of has. But this is just kind of more of a learning curve, I'd have to say. But in terms of the future, like Ghostfire has come back in like a mild sense. They've been dropping like singles like in 2021, 2022, and 2023. They said they were going to drop an album in 2023, but I don't know if that happened. We'll have to see as far as that pitch kind of happens. But I'm definitely going to review the Tyburn Jig album as far as that pitch kind of happens, and then we'll wrap up Ghostfire as far as that pitch kind of particularly goes with it. But hopefully they drop some more music. But this is a pretty excellent EP here, I'd have to say.